Mic check. Can everybody hear us? Yo, yep. Mic check. Can everybody hear us?
Yeah.
Just post something on the stream, guys, if you can hear us there. Just post something. Good stuff. Okay, we'll be starting in about 5 minutes. Actually, let's get Andy and Alf just to have a quick word, just so you guys can hear them too. Hey, you can hear me?
You.
Did you guys hear Andy and Alfredo in chat there?
Fredo.
Okay. There we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the stream. Just one last check. Can everyone hear me? Just type something in chat there. There we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the stream. One last check. Can everyone hear me? Hey, Tyrone. Great. Can hear us. Awesome. Sounds good. All right. So we've got Andy and Alfredo is here as well. Andy and Alf, you want to say hi?
Hey guys.
Sounds good.
Hey everybody, how we doing?
All right. One sec, guys. I'm just going to mute something here. Okay. All right. So, thank you, Alan, 2503. It's been a crazy year. So, you know, it's almost been what, a year and a few days now since we launched. We've done a lot. We've seen a lot. Heard a lot. It's been pretty exciting. So the topic really of this stream is just to kind of go over what we went over in our birthday video. I'm going to maybe show the designs and how the evolution of the designs worked. We'll probably talk a little bit about Host 3.0 and custom keybinds. And then we'll hop into some Q&A and just answer any questions you guys might have for us. So without further ado, what do you guys want to see first? Do you want to see design evolution, or do you want to talk about Host 3.0 and custom keybinds? I know, decisions, right?
Let's do the design stuff first. That's the super cool stuff.
Oh, I'm getting some design, some Host 3.0. Keybinds. Okay. I've seen more Host 3.0 than I've seen design. Okay, so that's an interesting topic. Host 3.0. So right now we're on Host 2.0, just so everyone's aware. The host has always been designed with Java and I believe it's a front-end framework called Java FX. I am not the guy that works on the host or anything, so whatever I'm saying, take it with a grain of salt. It's just from my knowledge. Alfredo might know a little bit more on that, but as to my knowledge, the host is written in Java, and the front end that's displayed is a Java FX application. And the problem with Java is it doesn't get updated often. When you're doing a lot of things like we're trying to accomplish, a non-updated framework is always going to be a problem, especially the way that Java handles virtual keybind presses. Now, Host 1.0 or even 0.0, whatever you want to call it, was designed in Java originally by Mike, because that's what he does. You know, he does Java every day, all day. And it worked great for his purposes. And when we teamed up with him and decided to make GameGlass, it made the most sense to reuse his code and architecture and then iterate on it and make it into what GameGlass is. But we realized quickly after doing a lot of things and getting the whole team on board and planning our vision that Java just wasn't cutting it anymore from a programming language point of view. So we decided that we're going to completely redo it in a different coding language. So that's what I think 3 of the 4 developers are working on right now, is trying to finish up Host 3.0 as quickly as they can. Now, as specifically for keybinds, the issue, like I said before, we're having was Java wasn't able to render especially Azerty and Quartz properly. Though that was the big issue, was when you were trying to input commands for an obscure symbol, Java just wasn't working properly for it. And we tried a million different things. We actually had a beta test up on Host 2.0 with the custom keybinds, and it worked all right in QWERTY. But when we got into Quartz and Azerty, and obviously we want to be as flexible as we can, it didn't work. And we didn't want to release a product that only worked for, you know, 3/4 of our users. We wanted to release a product that worked for everybody. So unfortunately, we had to just make the decision to scrap it and bring it over to the new coding language because it just was not working at all with the old one. So That's the reason, at least, that custom keybinds has taken so long, is because we did it, and we just couldn't get it to work in our old programming language. It works in the new one, but now we got to get everything else up to date on with the new programming language in order to get host 3.0 out. So it is going to take longer, but at least we can do it right, whereas we were restricted with host 2.0. That's kind of as far as I know. Alf, do you want to add anything onto that? I think Mike's in chat actually as well, if Mike wants to add anything.
Yeah, so basically, or if Mike wants to pitch in, I know that host 3.0, that the main reason why we switched, obviously, is also because more people can work on it. We have more people with the right knowledge for the new language. It will be written in. It is written in JavaScript. So we can share the burden, more of us, and we can work on it. More people, and it's actually more supported because it's a very popular language at the moment, and it will be because it will always be, because it's the language of the web. So it will always be up there, and it will make all of the changes, future changes for the host, probably much faster iterations for those changes, because of more people working on it and because of more support for the language itself.
Yeah, so, this is Mike, by the way.
Sorry, hold on, Mike.
Yeah.
Apparently we're having issues just with the levels. Is this better now?
Okay, so to just go into a little more detail of the transition between host 2.0 and 3.0 and the reasoning. Java was used for host 2.0, host 1.0, and the predecessor to GameGlass, and it's a great programming language for servers. It's not super great for desktop applications. Essentially, probably about a decade ago, the guys who created Java and are currently run Java Oracle, they decided to basically drop out of the desktop space. So JavaFX isn't a thing that they're supporting anymore, which is what the desktop component of the host uses and the user interface uses. So we're moving to something very similar to Electron that allows us to have a very quick, responsive UI with modern technologies that's constantly updated. It's supported by the biggest companies in the industry, and it allows not just me, but 2 or 3 other programmers, Alfredo, Ron, maybe even Sam, to actually help out with the development of host 3.0. So we'll be getting faster startup speeds, less processing power usage, less RAM usage, faster iterations of development. It's just going to be a win overall.
Yeah, and it's we're using the packaging like with NWJS, right, Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was another big issue we actually had with Host 2.0, was finding a good packaging solution. When we originally launched it, I believe we were using like Java 7 or 8, which was quite outdated. And the way to get, I think, a lot of the custom keybind functionality to work, I think we had to update it to 11. But the problem with 11 was there's no way to bundle it. There's no way to make that application executable. And the one thing we were looking at still wasn't released for Windows yet, or something along those lines. So by moving over to NWJS, we just have so much more flexibility and so many more options. It's just going to make our lives infinitely better for the foreseeable future. But yeah, as Mike said as well, Electron is, a lot of apps are running Electron right now, but we just wanted to be as resource conscious as we could, so we wanted to go with NWJS. So yeah, that's kind of the update on Host 3.0. As for how far along it is, I mean, we have almost everyone working on it right now exclusively. So we're going to try to get that out as soon as we can. I'm not going to give you any release dates, but as we posted in our birthday video, we do have that Trello board. Actually, Chad, could you go ahead and post that in chat? Just the Trello board link, just so everybody has it. You guys can follow along with that. We'll update it every week or so, just so you can see what we're doing and, keep us on our toes. So if you've got any questions about Host 3.0 or keybinds, please just put them in chat, and we'll get to them at the end of the stream. We'll answer all the questions. So, I mean, the two big things we kind of wanted to go over today was the Host 3.0, what we're doing there, keyboard customizations, and now I'll go into the design stuff. So 1 second.
I will just before we move on, I think one thing I just want to mention, one of the reasons we're spending so much time trying to get the host application right is the intent is that it becomes more of the brain for what GameGlass does. Not just for receiving and interpreting your keyboard or your mouse commands, but also for potentially how you select shards, how you customize shards. A lot of the other features we have planned for GameGlass going forward all rely on a really flexible, really powerful, really easy to develop on host. So because it's the brain and the heart of so much of what we want to do, it's even more important that we get it right, and not just for keybinds obviously, but for everything else as well. So it's a really important one that we, as I said, we need to make sure we get it right. We need to make sure we spend the time on it to make sure it's what we need it to be going forward, because everything in the future relies on it.
That's right.
Also, I think it would be good to add that the work on Host 3.0, it will allow for also better security for the users. Jeez.
Yeah, just add on that, it's not like we're not secure now. It's just that we want to add on top of that because that's a big priority for us, just making everything as secure as possible. Okay, all right, let's move on to the designs then. 1 second. Okay, can everyone see my screen here? I'm assuming yes, because I can't actually tell if you can or not. All right. So, I mean, this is iteration 1. This is the GameGlass you guys know. And as you've probably seen, let's move up here. I really should rebind my Discord key. That's push to talk because it's now moving my screen around. All right, so everyone's seen this screen here. I have another one somewhere, but this is basically the new UI that was demoed in one of the ISC episodes, and it's just using the new building blocks technology. Let me actually see if I have it. 1 sec. There it is. So that's the screen they demoed in the ISC episode, and we knew that this was coming at some point. And the problem, obviously, with keeping GameGlass up to date is that CIG is changing things constantly. So it's a real challenge for us to get things right and, try to modify our systems and our designs based on what it looks like in the game. The whole point of it from the beginning was let's make it look like you took an MFD out of a Gladius and put it on your desk. Obviously, with these new changes, that it doesn't look like that anymore. I mean, if I go over here, that looks nothing like it anymore. So we wanted to do something new, and we wanted to do the same thing with this new updated design. But not only that, we had a lot of problems with our old design. So 1 sec. Actually, I need to change my Discord settings. 1 second.
I'll mention as well that a Reddit user, excuse me, a Reddit user did that really sleek concept art based on the in-game UI. I don't have that Reddit user's name, so I can't correctly attribute them, but if you do a search for it on the Star Citizen subreddit, you'll see that person posted that work. They essentially spent all that time kind of creating that graphic of the new UI. So not our work, not even CIG's work, a really super awesome Reddit user. I'm sorry I can't attribute it correctly, but we thank them for their amazing work.
That's right. Okay, can you guys hear me still? I just went on voice activated. Makes my life easier so I don't have to mess up keyboard commands here. Let me go back into my screen. Where is that? Here. Okay. So one of the big problems that we had with our old design was the top and the bottom navigation, as well as they work. What it does is it really limits the space in between for shards. And the problem with our shards is that they're on tablets, and the problem with tablets is that there's not a lot of vertical real estate when they're in landscape mode. Now, depending on what tablet you have, you might get more horizontal real estate in landscape mode. Like the Kindles have a weird aspect ratio versus a standard iPad or like an S2. I think they're 4:3, whereas a Kindle's 16:9 or something. So the problem we were having was with this navigation setup, it was really challenging to come up with designs that would fit in this small window. And when you scaled this down to 300-400 pixels tall, you're squishing everything so much that it was almost impossible to press a button. So we wanted to come up with a system that worked a lot better, that utilized the space better and made it so it's more scalable. And we figured right now is a great time to do that, because if they're updating their UI anyways, then we should probably just get to designing something. So this is actually the first iteration of this design. Actually, let me go back over here. This is the first iteration of the design. As you can see, it's just what did we do before? How do we change the color schemes? What can we do with it? And then this was actually the first iteration of the flight systems shard with the new navigation. And then we made some more modifications to make it even more friendly for vertical real estate. And that's what we came to after that. So in case you're curious, I've actually had a few questions about it, but these are your ship power and shield and weapons and everything buttons. So instead of having them at the bottom like we did before, we've moved them as a primary feature on the flight system shard. And then, yeah, everything is just a little bit better laid out. And we're utilizing the space horizontally for the navigation moving forward because, like I said before, there's just a lot more space horizontally than there is vertically. So now we can utilize this entire space for shards. And what, of course, that enables us to do is something like this, where you've got your full shard here, and then you move over, and this is it scaled on a phone. And I mean, sure, it's really small still, but the fact is it's usable. And if people want to use that, we don't want to limit them. Some people might have really big phones, so it's going to be bigger than this. This is actually, I believe, this is like a... actually, I don't know which one this is. I think I have a Google. Oh yeah, here. So here's a Google Pixel 2 XL. It actually has. I think this is an iPhone X, which is the smallest width of a screen we're going to get to. But this is a Google Pixel 2 XL, and that's a pretty standard phone size. So as you can see, it's still, you can still use it, and it should still function properly. As for the shard design of it, we're still, obviously it's a work in progress as we figure out exactly how we want to handle it. But we also want to make it easier on the developers. So we don't have to custom design fragments anymore. So we can scale things, and based on a grid system, we can actually create fragments on the fly. And that's going to save us a ton of dev time to work on things like new shards instead of focusing on the same shard twice. So what you'd see, this is just a potential prototype, is for the flight components, instead of having all of the buttons along the top there, we're breaking it into 2 pages so you can show whatever you want. But of course, we're still concepting that, and maybe there's a better way of navigating it. But the idea is then still, even on a phone, you've got your navigation. You can pop it out on the left-hand side here. And on a landscape phone, it's going to show up just like it does on a tablet. What that looks like, of course, is... Let's go back over here. A collapsed navigation, of course, looks like this. And there's this little button here. Let me actually... Let's go to a prototype here.
Just while you're working on that, just to go back to that that page where we're working on how to show in a fragment the buttons along that top strip. And it used to be that when we designed a fragment, we would decide for you which of those top flight strip buttons kind of appeared where and how you could access it, and maybe it would overlay the entire fragment. One of the things you'll see in large and small ways as we go through and work on the redesign is giving you more flexibility to decide what goes on which screen and where. We're not at a point where you can kind of drag and kind of move things around on the screen and completely customize it, but as we move forward, we want to try and find more and more ways, and eventually some much bigger ways, for you to decide what goes on which screens that best suit your gameplay. And we'll still give you, these major components. We'll still give you a flight shard, but there'll be areas and ways that you can customize it for how you fly versus how we fly or I fly. So that's a big theme we want to make sure we do more and more of as we go through this redesign and as we think about how we can put them together during build and implementation.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so where was I here? Right, navigation. Okay, let's do this here. This should work. Okay, so this is the vehicle shard. And basically the whole concept of this navigation is its flexibility. The fact is right now, with how things work, let's just quickly go over here and go here. So the way that this works is we've got flight, ground, combat, social, and shards. The problem with this is that if I'm in flight and I want to go to mining, I've got to go to shards and then I've got to go to mining. And shards is going to be eventually pretty, chock full of shards, and it might be a challenge to find things. And of course, as Andy is saying right now, we want to get more into the customization of your experience and what you want to be showing. So the point of that is that on the left, we've got a lot more room here now. So we've got flight, as we're just going to locate this by icon. So flight, ground, combat, social, mining. There's still space for, we could probably add another 2 or 3 shards here. Of course, we would allow you to customize those as well. Not obviously right now, but that's the plan. But what's handy is that if you click on this button here, this is just basically a more shards button. Actually, let me show you what this navigation looks like flight out. So if we go like this is what it would look like fully expanded. If you don't know what the icon is, you get a better view of it. You can understand that this is flight, ground, etc., etc. And it might come in handy for the more shards section as well. So if we put that back in and we go here, I've used the same icon, so don't mind that. But the idea here is you just clicked on more shards, and all of your shards that you have are going to be in this section now. You're not leaving your screen. You can still navigate to any shard you want. And of course, this one, you'd be able to customize it and reorder it and everything as well. And this one just, it has scrolling capabilities as well. So it just makes everyone's life dramatically easier.
And that's a lot of this reordering and assigning of shards to buttons. This is again where the host comes in. That really powerful customizing the way your shards look and work. Doing it on a screen, on a tablet or on a phone, it's not a great user experience. If all you've got is a phone, even if it's a large phone, it gets really fiddly to kind of change those settings. So the host on your PC is a much more natural, more pleasant to use experience. So we need the host to be able to power these kinds of interactions.
Yeah, the best way to do all of the customization, instead of breaking it up between your tablet and the host, we want to do it all in the host because it gives us a million more options. And that comes into play as well with WebRTC, which Mike mentioned in the Happy Birthday video. It basically allows two-way communication between the host and the device, the client. Which means eventually we'd be able to do something where if you're building a theme on your computer, like on the host software, you'd be able to, you'd be able to have a live view of what that theme's going to look like on your tablets while you're building it. We can't do that with the way things are working right now. And then, of course, another problem, of course, with customization on the client, so the app, is with different screen resolutions, we've got to build all this functionality in that makes it really challenging, and the interactions really challenging to customize it. So it's better to have it all in one place, and that place will be the new host. So that's why you're not seeing things like themes or anything like that, because eventually we'll be moving everything over to the host. But one more thing is we do have a games button here as well. So that's just a quick, easy access to click on that, go, and you get to the screen that shows all the games we support. But that's kind of it for the navigation, unless Andy, you want to chime in on anything with that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, one thing, Tyrone, is yes, you'll be able to switch it from the left-hand side to the right-hand side of the screen. Potentially doing that independently for each device that you have as well, differently. If you've got a screen on either side of your screen, you could have them, with the nav closest to you. But yes, that's the kind of thing that we want to let people do. Again, driven by the host is a really important place for that to be. But the intent is to give you a really consistent navigation experience that is the same for every game. We need to get that navigation layer off the top to give us more room. We need to get it off the top because not every game that we support really suits having that big strip at the top. Maybe we're going to support a game in the future. Maybe it only has 2 or 3 shards. It doesn't have a huge list of shards, but it's still really handy to have with GameGlass. So it doesn't make sense to have this huge chunk of real estate at the top that we reserve for navigation, maybe that's not needed. So this way it's a better place for it from a layout perspective. It's more consistent whilst also being more flexible. And it's still a really great user experience to use and navigate between shards and between games the same way.
Cool. All right, so beyond the navigation, I've kind of shown you the layout, how that's going to function. We've shown you the navigation, how that's going to function. We've talked about customization. You can see here just, how we've converted these specific shards into their counterparts with the new layout. We've got the combat. So let's talk about combat, because this makes me sad. We went back and forth on a lot of designs for this central combat shard. Actually, I can show one. So we were originally, this was the design for the combat shard. It was very utilitarian, and it worked well. It's just, it wasn't pretty. So we actually went back and forth and we came up with this fancy one. So the problem now is that this was designed with, the current implementation of 3.10 in mind. So I went and played and I got an understanding of the targeting systems, how they worked. And then we, of course, designed something based on that. The day we released our birthday video and showcased all of this new stuff, CIG decided to release an update that completely changed everything again. And this is the pitfall we have with just, our business positioning, is that we've got to make everything work with their game. And, unless we're in cahoots with them, it's a real challenge. So, this is still relevant, but it's going to change again now because I've got to redo it. I'm glad that it hasn't been released because that would be another challenge. But, this is going to be the general idea. So you'd be able to switch from pinning to systems. This is just a tab as well. Once you change to systems, you might have another couple buttons here, or we might just leave the pinning stuff there. And when you move to systems, you can still move left and right, and it's going to cycle subsystems instead. And pins changes to reset or this. I don't know. So we'll figure it out.
So what Craig is saying essentially is that pinning and systems button, those are toggles, and they change what that bottom arc looks like. The top arc remains the same. That's your core normal targeting functions. And yes, we're going to have to go back and completely kind of rethink how that works, because they're kind of going to this weird hybrid model of the old system and the new system. But that bottom arc will be a little bit more flexible based on the context that you want the targeting to work within.
Right. And what's cool, though, is that they do have turret controls in 3.10. So we did want to add something into the combat shard where we could do that. So if we go down here, what's great about this being all in the combat shard is there can be some subtle animation to it. So when we switch from the ship to the turret shard, what's going to happen is this bottom section kind of pops down, and then this middle section with some turreting controls will actually animate and come out, and it'll look really cool. So that's just one of the benefits of doing this all on a single shard. And then, of course, it's just, you don't really have to go anywhere or do anything. It's just all going to be on one screen. It's going to be good. But on top of that, speaking about combat, there definitely is one elephant in the room, and it's our current targeting array, and how is that going to work with 3.10? I think what we're probably going to do for now obviously we're going to leave it until CIG decides on something, because at this point I'm not really confident that they have settled on something. And I know we like to release our updates right when they go live with them, but this is kind of a unique situation where without knowing what the keybinds are going to be and having them settled on something, we're not going to spend the time and the dev work to change things when it's not for sure. We're going to try to make this current targeting array work in some way with 3.10. So we're going to be changing some labels over. Obviously, the keybinds are going to change, but redesigning something for old shards is something we're going to try to avoid at this point until we can move to the new system and the new shards. So we're going to do our best to make it work. Well, we will make it work. It's not like you're going to be 4 months without a combat shard. We will make it work. It's just I don't know how it will look yet. So I know I've been getting a lot of questions about that, and that's the answer. And then moving on just to the emotes. So one of the big problems I found with this shard was, first off, it doesn't look great. The categorization that we were trying to accomplish with this shard didn't make a lot of sense. Well, it made sense. It's hard to understand because you need to understand what the icon is, and especially on smaller devices, those icons are really small, so you probably have no idea what they are. So we wanted to move away from that system, and that's kind of why we went over here to this new system. It's taking better use of the vertical real estate again, and it actually is able, on this device size, it's able to show all of the different emotes that are currently bound in game. And it also has a better distinction between actions that you need, like a gun, to have drawn, and not those actions. Because right now, I think forward, left, right, stop, yes, no, forward, left, right, stop, point, come. So they're not even organized right. So there's some on this screen that you need a weapon drawn, some not. So that's confusing. So that will be fixed in this new design as well. And of course, it's a work in progress. If new emotes are added, or if we want to add the ASL stuff, or there's other ways to do it, then yeah. So there's a lot of work to do still. It's still a work in progress, but we're making progress to make this very feature friendly and usable for everyone. I know one thing that like a lot of people use GameGlass specifically for the emotes, and having them all on one screen instead of having to remember where they are, that would be amazing. And I know that one thing for sure that people talk about all the time is adding a favorites category. And that, of course, another thing, Host 3.0, once we can do more customization, being able to have a list of emotes that you want to have specifically on one screen is definitely something we can do. Obviously, it just hasn't been concepted and we haven't started working on it yet. But that's the kind of stuff we do want to be doing. But other than that, I think that's kind of everything I really wanted to show with the design. Can you think of anything else, Andy, Mike, Alfredo? Is there anything else we should be showing here with the design stuff?
Nothing I think we're ready to show yet. I think, again, one of the things we wanted to try and do, obviously, was try and align it better with the game's kind of direction for its UI at the moment. And we'll always be keeping an eye on what the game is doing and taking cues from the game, where it's appropriate and where we should be. As Craig said, we really do want to make it feel like we've ripped a part of the game out and put it on your phone or on your tablet, on your desk. But at the same time, we really wanted to work on the user experience of it and the functional clarity of the shards as well, to make them more effective and easier to use just from a UI and a UX perspective. So that was a really important thing for us too. And we'll always be trying to balance that functional clarity with the immersion and the wow factor that we try to go for the shards. It's always a balancing act. Internally, we talk a lot about where we need to add more of that wow factor and maybe a bit less of it. But we're really happy with this new direction. We think it fits better with the game, and we think it's a lot easier for people to use. So hopefully you guys are digging it as well.
Yes. So do you have something to add, Alf?
I know I was just going to say that obviously you took charge and did the redesigns, even though CIG can change anything at any point because reasons. And I just think that you did a great job with the material that we do have, and is a great representation of what it can be.
Oh,
for changes in the future.
oh, that's so sweet. Thanks, Alf. All right, let's go back to our live screen here. Okay. All right, so let's do questions then. I'm gonna hop into a channel here to see what we've got. Chad, if you could just post all of the questions we've been getting, and then we'll go ahead and answer those. I guess Andy's already answered that one. Will there be an option to push the menu to the right side? So Jason has a suggestion.
While we're looking at questions, one thing that we're trying to do with the shard designs is leave ourselves room to grow as the game is developed. A really great example of that is we know there are controls coming down the road for vehicle turrets and vehicle missiles, for example. So giving us some space on the vehicle shard to give us the controls that might be coming along in the future for turrets. Obviously, you can use the turret shard for that, but if there are specific controls for vehicle missile targeting for the ballista or whatever, yeah, and that's just one example of where we need to leave ourselves room for those features coming along so we can grow as those systems are added to the game.
Right. Okay, so a couple questions. I don't think we've got too many questions, so we can keep it short and sweet. There's a suggestion here. Please don't combine door open and door close into one button. Same issue with lock and unlock. It makes it impossible to know the state of the function if it's in a single button. So that's true, but the problem at the same time is we've tried to stay away from any kind of toggle function in GameGlass. The reason being is we don't know the state of that in-game. We can assume that you're only using GameGlass to lock and unlock or open and close doors, but the fact is you might be in a different situation where somebody else has opened a door or somebody else has locked a ship, or you actually use a keybind or your joystick to do it, and then everything's out of sync again. And sure, we could just leave it up to the user to figure that out, but I think it's been a philosophical point for us at the beginning was we don't want to make it so things get out of sync easily, especially for stuff like lights, because depending on if you're in a ship or not, or if you log into your ship, and there's a whole bunch of reasons your lights could or couldn't be on. Or if you're flight ready and you log into your ship, your flight and your power's on, how do we know it's on? We don't. So we can't really have these toggle states, and they can't be consistent. So door open and close makes sense right now for it being a single button, just because we can't detect those toggle states. But in the future, if that changes and we're able to do something like we do in ED, where we're actually able to see that, that changes everything. So for example, in ED, we can actually see the state of those in game. So we can show you if your landing gear's down or not. But in Star Citizen, that's different. Chad saying your new design shows it as a toggle, which is why I brought that. Oh, my new design shows it as a toggle. No, my new design shows it as lock and unlock in the same. It's not going to be a toggle though. So lock and unlock is actually a keybind in Star Citizen. So there's lock, there's unlock, and then there's lock unlock, I believe. So there's all three of them, which is why I just went with the lock/unlock. If I'm wrong, then correct me, and obviously would change that. But let's move on. So Tyrone is asking, since you use an agile process to manage features and release, would you consider community access to your backlog as well? The community could vote for specific features and give insight. So that's a good question, Tyrone. And Andy and I actually went through a bunch of different products that allowed that kind of functionality, where we would list a bunch of features, community would vote on them. The products weren't great though. And you know, I tried for quite some time to get something up that made sense, but integrating it with all of our systems was a challenge. It's definitely something we'd consider, but you know, it's not going to show our whole backlog, obviously. But we could definitely do something in the future where the community helps us decide, you know, what features or shards, you know, would be the most valuable to work on.
Yeah, I really like that philosophy of exposing things that are in consideration for us. And there's this kind of weird spot where we're considering some things almost. It's really good for that kind of process. We use Jira as our actual production management system. So, as Craig said, it wouldn't literally be access to our backlog. But I think a way for us to expose the things we're thinking about doing before we spend time developing and engineering them. I think that's a really cool idea. I really like that. We've always really liked that. As Craig said, we've tried a few different ways to try and do it. We'll maybe have a look at some other options because yeah, it's a really cool idea to try and get your feedback on what you think is important. But you never know when you get a super cool idea from the community that we just haven't considered, and we're like, yeah, obviously we should totally do that thing that you're suggesting. So it's a win for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. So, is there any chance, I'm imagining that's supposed to say, is any chance users will have the option to upload custom images? Yeah. I mean, with Host 3.0, that's definitely the plan. Yeah, I mean, customized background images for sure. And then beyond that, I don't really want to get into too much detail, but definitely custom images are a possibility. Is sharing custom shards with the community still in the backlog? Still in the backlog. Yep. Don't really want to dive into that unless Andy wants to touch on it at all.
Yeah, look, we've got a really big plan for that whole area of creating and sharing things. It's a huge area of our roadmap. There's a ton of stuff we're doing on there. We're not ready to talk about it yet, but please know that we've got a lot of very aggressive, very large plans in that space, and we'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah. So formless forms. Preset shield functions or power functions. Yeah, so it depends on how far you're willing to take that. Like right now with our current designs, you're able to just set everything to thrusters or weapons or whatever, but if you wanted to have a macro where it was everything to weapons and then shields front or something, that's a little bit more extensive. That is something we'd probably want to confirm that we can do, just because at that point you're kind of getting more of an advantage than you would doing it manually, and we don't want to be breaking any terms of use or anything like that with CIG that could get us into trouble. So we like the ideas of it, but it could potentially give users an unfair advantage, and that is a tough area to really understand where we stand as a company right now.
I think I remember some really early wireframes where we talked about having almost scenario type functionality where you could have a set of pre-saved configurations for your engine and your shields. You can imagine almost one where you've got a runaway configuration saved, which sets all your shields to rear, maximizes your engines, maybe your system's power to beef up your shields while you're trying to get away. It's one button that says run away, and it reconfigures your ship to suit that situation. Maybe one for forward assault, one for, I don't know, whatever. So I agree, it's a super cool idea, but yeah, as Craig said, we need to be sensitive about the unfair advantage thing. The use of macros can be really tricky as well. So it's a super cool idea. We'll continue to think about it, but there's some complexities at play that just make it a little bit tricky.
Yeah, I think that right now we're trying to fix a specific problem, which is accessibility for these kind of games, but not to give, as you were saying, an unfair advantage to anyone. It's just labels for your keybinds, and it's for immersion as well, but not something that it should give too much of an advantage. to people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a fine line, isn't it? Like, it's we like that playing a game with GameGlass feels better and maybe is even easier because we're making some commands just more explicit and easier to define and use. So in a sense, there is just baked into it, there is an advantage, but there is kind of a line, and executing complex macros, typically that's kind of where the line philosophically should be and where most developers want it to be as well.
Yeah, I think it's a challenge for developers too, because game companies can't really ban it. So, like, as an example, you can set up complex macros in other programs and with Windows. You can set up custom macros, I believe, with voice attack as well. It's just when we are setting them up for you, that's, we're almost enticing you to have an advantage. Whereas, if we're giving you the ability to create a macro, that may be different, but I'm not entirely sure where that would sit. And of course, like I said, we just want to make sure everything is up to snuff with CIG and whatever companies that we're building these shards for. So it would have to be discussion with them first. But philosophically, I mean, I think the way we function as a business is we don't want to give anyone an unfair advantage. We just want to, as Alfredo said, increase accessibility and immersion and utility. So, but I mean, as for presets, though, I mean, I guess we could get into another thing real quick, which is the director controls, which actually does have presets. And I think somebody asked me the other day if we're going to include those features in the new designs as well. I mean, ideally, yes, we will. So right now in director mode, you can actually save profiles, and we don't have that option in GameGlass. So we could do something, I mean, I'm just speaking top of my head here, but we could do something where we're saving profiles as well as letting you label those profiles in GameGlass so you know what they are instead of having to remember them and guess them. So you maybe have like in front of ship, and then maybe another one's like, I don't know, over the shoulder, and you can actually label those and go right to those profiles. So that's just a thought as well. Okay, so any plans on expanding the platform to have invoking commands such as power grid and customizable features interfaces within GameGlass? Key commands which could be integrated into other games, invoking commands much like... Oh, so are you saying like... I think what you're saying is using things like... Oh, like power grid, customizable interfaces within GameGlass. Yeah, so I mean, that just gets into the custom shard thing that we've been talking about here and there. We don't want to get too into it. But, definitely with the way the customization is going, that's what we want to accomplish, is allowing you to customize your own shards. We have a lot of plans on that. We talk about it a lot internally, and we've got a lot in the works, but I just don't think we want to get into it quite yet until we have something more solid laid out.
Yeah, we, as Craig said, we talk about it a lot internally. We even have some early kind of engineering considerations and kind of thoughts about it. It's a really big area for us. There's a lot that we want to accomplish there. More games is absolutely the thing. How do we tackle more games? How do we let people use GameGlass for more games? And for the different kinds of games, some games have very specific commands and very specific things people want to do, and they need some really specific widgets and tools and kind of button layouts to make the experience with those games work. Other games are more generic. How do we have a platform that works for both? There's a lot of stuff that is in that area. As Craig said, we're thinking about it all. It's a huge area for us. I'm not ready to talk about it yet, but when the time is right, there'll be some really huge announcements for that whole space. So stay tuned.
Yeah. So that kind of answers a few different questions there, actually, which is great. So
Quickly, Hyperspace Narwhal, I'll jump onto that one real quick. So Hyperspace Narwhal is pretty much done from a dev point of view. The issue we're having with it is that we developed it in Unity. The engineers that we were building it with just had a lot of experience with that. Back when we were building it, interestingly, Unity had a WebGL export option that was reasonably performant. It broke, or I should say, Apple broke it for we're going back and we're looking at how can we refactor the game to make it more performant for more devices. It's meant to be a casual bullet hell type game, to kind of fill in that, that 10-minute quantum travel time between Olisar and Hurston, that kind of thing. So it's not meant to be like a hardcore, super schmick, like a million frames per second game, but obviously we want it to be, nice and fast and playable. So we're just looking at the performance of it. Once we get that to the level that we're happy with it, then we'll be ready to get it out there. So that's where we're at with that at the moment. Mostly developed, a few tiny things to fix up for the game itself, but performance is where we want to make sure we get it to the right level.
yeah. All right. So there was another thing here that I wanted to go on to. Somebody mentioned we'll be able to match our cockpits. You can actually do that right now with GlassPass. You have the ability to have custom themes and create custom themes as well. So there's some presets that we tried to match the cockpits in game, and you can also create your own custom theme as well. Obviously, like I mentioned earlier, all that functionality is eventually going to move over to the new host, which will make everything much easier. But for now, that's how you're going to be able to do it. So there's a question here about VR, and that one's actually close to my heart because I love VR. And the answer is not right now, but that's absolutely something we want to think about. We know that Star Citizen's going to be VR. We know that Elite Dangerous is currently in VR. The ability to just, flick your wrist or something, have GameGlass pop up and select something, I know for me would be way better in VR, because the way it works right now is you've got your HOTAS on your desk, you've got something on your head, you have no idea where your buttons are, you're feeling around for them, you're not sure which one's which, and it's a huge pain. So it's just a matter of figuring out the best way to interact with that panel. I know there's things like OVR Drop that already allow you to interact with things in games. Obviously, it's a little bit different for us because you're not using your controllers, like your Vive controllers or your Oculus or your Knuckles or whatever. So we just need to think outside the box and how we would get that to work. But it's definitely something we would love to do, because it would just bring us to a whole nother level and bring us to a whole nother community of gamers that use VR exclusively.
And as people say, there's a really compelling reason that people who play these complex games in VR almost need it more than people that are playing on a desktop. They can't see the buttons on their joystick. If they've got like a huge throttle with a bunch of buttons on it, it can be hard to see it all. So it's a really compelling use case for having it a good, elegant way to solve how you invoke the GameGlass shards, navigate between them and interact with the buttons, whilst being respectful of kind of the world that's behind it. And that world space, that screen space, is complex. But yeah, there's a super cool reason for having it, but it's not an insignificant engineering problem to solve, and unfortunately not our priority right now.
Yeah,
it would be amazing. Super cool.
Well, we've only got so many developers. That would be something we would love to work on, though. I know that would be like a great personal project for us. First off, hey Tonk, it's good to see you in here, buddy. And second, I think that's, Tyrone. What was scrambled in the birthday video? Hint, maybe. I don't know. It just seemed like a transmission problem. I don't know if we can really, I don't think we can unscramble it, so I don't think we'll ever know what Andy said unless he wants to mention something.
Oh, it might take some time to unscramble it. Maybe eventually we'll find that lost footage.
Let's just say you will like it a lot. There's nothing I can say other than that, really, because I don't want to give anything away.
No, we can't hint. We can't.
No.
We can't. Sorry, guys.
When?
We can't hint when or what, unfortunately.
This year is probably a good when. But that could be any time between now and, 6 months from now. So, no, I'm not saying it will be a year-ish, but it will be within the next year. As in, it might be next week. It might be 6 months from now. It might not. I don't know. Like I said, Andy's got to unscramble that transmission, and when we have more info on it, we'll share. Okay, is there any more questions? I think we've kind of answered everything here now. I'm just looking through our logs to make sure there's nothing else. If you have another question, quickly post it, and we can get to it before we head off. I think that was all of them, though.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming to hang out, guys.
Yeah, much appreciated. Thanks for all the birthday wishes. Obviously, as Andy mentioned in the video, and as we'd always say, we love our community. Thank you all. Sorry, Pella Raider, is my question intentionally ignored because I'm not an analyst? I didn't see your question. I don't want to miss a question here. I'm trying to find it.
So Craig's answered that. So can you change the color of your cockpit to match Star Citizen? So yes, that's what Craig was talking about with the themes that we have available right now. So anyone can jump in and pick one of the preset themes that we have. And if you're a GlassPass member, you can create your own completely custom themes right now.
Yep.
So that's potentially how you would customize the GameGlass shards to match your cockpit inside Star Citizen.
Yeah, and real quick, we haven't forgot about you, ED. I see a lot of commanders. Yeah, so don't worry. I know we've shown a lot of Star Citizen stuff, but, we still love that game, and we are still working on stuff for it. So I'll just leave it at that. Yeah, so thanks, everybody. Appreciate you coming out. Community is amazing. We love you guys. And, until next time, if you need to get a hold of us, Discord, Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, wherever. If you need support, message Chad. He loves being bugged. And have a great week. Bye, everybody.
Take it easy.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.